Wait. Hello, we apparently are live. If anyone in book club is watching us, please comment so that we know that we're not talking to nobody. Although it's getting to that time of the year, I think, where everyone's super busy. But here we go. Anthea is joining us. Just adding Anthea into the stream. All right. Anyway, thank you. Everyone, welcome for joining us. Golly, thank you for joining us. Today we've got Anthea and I are chatting with the fabulous Sarah Bailey of The Housemate. And I just quickly ran into my bookshelf and could only find this one, though I've read all your books. This is that one, Where the Dead Go. My favourite, I think, it's a touch and go. I really love all your books. I think they're very well written. And one of the things I really enjoy is I do love crime fiction, even though I don't write it. I don't know how you hi Tracy, and hi whoever else is there. I can't see your name because it says Facebook user. So if you do want us to be able to see who you are, make sure you go to StreamYard/Facebook, and then it will let us see who you are. Jessie's there as well, and someone's saying hello from the Blue Mountains. Anyway, what I wanted to say is I do read a lot of crime. I don't know how you feel. I read it and I can enjoy crime without so much like reading it thinking, oh my gosh, this is so much better than it. Why am I even trying? Or analysing as I go. I can just enjoy it because it's not my genre and something I probably would never write, even though, that's because I don't think I have the skill. But what I was saying is I really love your crime novels because I feel like from the first paragraph, I think I messaged Anthea and I said, oh my gosh, I know I'm going to like this. The characterization is already I was in Ollie's head within the first paragraph. And I think that's a really big skill. I don't know how you felt, Anthea. I don't know if Anthea can hear us. Anyway, so Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Same. I thought the credits were great. I did. I loved the complexity.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
So we're stoked to have you here, and we've got a few questions from our lovely members in book club too. But I just wondered if you could start by telling us a little bit about what was the first seeds. Everyone always wants to know where writers get their ideas. So what was the first seed of inspiration for The Housemate?
Yeah, so I wanted to write something different. I think that was kind of the impetus for the whole book. And I'd written the series previously, the Gemma Woodstock series, starting with The Dark Lake. And I really enjoyed writing that series, but I just felt, I guess, like I wanted to try a standalone and see if I could break away from that character and write something new. So that was sort of the start of, I guess, thinking about what sort of story might work in that context. And then originally I had the idea of a dinner party sort of set up where something went terribly wrong, and by the end of the night somebody would be not with us anymore and there would kind of be an unpacking of what had happened. And idea.
You still write that? I like the sound of that.
Yeah, so that was kind of kicking around in my head for a while, and then I think I was trying to work out if that felt like enough to sustain a whole story, which is often my biggest challenge, I think, is trying to work out if it's actually a whole book worth of an idea.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have that, right? Yeah. And because there's lots of little ideas that I have, and then I think, oh, that's cool, and then they don't really feel like they've got enough meat on them to warrant a whole story. So yeah, I kept thinking about it, and I kind of I liked the idea of this dinner party that had a fatal ending, but I just couldn't quite work out how it all played out. And then I sort of liked the idea of a podcast, and I had that idea. And so I had these two threads of stories, and I just, I don't know, I couldn't work out how to kind of gel them together. And then I think eventually I came up with this idea of a cold case, and sort of having had the dinner party have happened in the past, or, not even really a dinner party, but like a little gathering. And then that seemed to sort of get the story kicking into gear a bit better. And so, and not having to actually play out the whole evening, but having had it happen suddenly felt like a much better way to sort of approach the whole story. So yeah, it took a while. Like I was writing Where the Dead Go, I think, when this idea first kicked around, and I got quite busy with a few other bits and pieces. So yeah, it just took a while.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. And I think sometimes, you know, I've had a few seeds of ideas floating around in my head for years, and they're just not quite ready yet. And, you know, they might never become a story, but maybe that dinner party will eventually, the piece of the puzzle will be there, you know, and you can still run a dinner party. Because I think, as you said, this one's, you know, a party in the past. A dinner party story would be quite different. So,
yes, I think it's so funny with books. Like, I'm sure you would know what I mean when I say this, but it's always so fascinating to me how a story can start and you could actually make the whole story about one particular scene, or you can kind of just decide to have one scene be just a reference, and then it becomes like a non big part of a story. And I mean, that sort of decision making you've got to do is exciting, but it's also like you make these big decisions and it completely changes the course of the whole story. So
it's like we're always doing like write your own adventure, with not necessarily adventure genre, but no matter what you're doing, I always think sometimes, you know, if I stop in a writing session at a certain point, the next day the story may have gone a totally different way if I'd kept writing that day, you know, because your mind kind of it does amazing weird things. I said hello to Kel, and there's a lot of other people saying hello, but I can't. Most of them say Facebook user, so I'm really sorry, people. Don't forget, you can definitely put questions in. I have collected some questions from the group already, but if you've got any questions for Sarah, pop them in and we'll ask her as we go. So you mentioned podcasts as well, and I know Anthea. Unfortunately, Anthea has dropped out. Everyone, her internet is having issues. And so, but she was going to ask you a little bit about podcasts and why you decided to include a podcast, which we both thought was, I mean, fascinating. We both listen to podcasts, and I've read a couple of books that do podcasts in different ways. So but I liked your sort of way. It's totally different to you. I really liked how you were just sort of comparing the media, the old media, I guess. I don't know the proper term, but, you know, actual newspaper, print media, where it was very traditional, you know, twice a day paper at the most kind of thing or whatever. And, you know, the news came not immediately, and now we get it immediately through social media and things like that. But also podcasts have become huge in getting people's attention on cases. So yeah, just talk a little bit about your relationship with podcasts and how you decided to put that in there, and if you got any ones that you loved and inspired you.
Yeah, I mean, I really like podcasts, and I think they really suit my lifestyle, I suppose. So, you know, I like doing two things at once, and I like kind of listening to something. And
mum and writer thing even more. We got so much we want to cram in.
Yeah, and I think it's just I get really bored when I'm just doing one thing at a time, especially if it's like cooking or, you know, walking or something like that. So I've really embraced podcasts as something that I listen to all the time, whether it's audiobooks sort of format or if it's actually like news and sort of just, you know, current affairs. Definitely true crime as well. And I think that when I first started playing around with this idea, I really wanted to make Ollie, the main character, a journalist. I really like the whole sort of industry of journalism. I find it really fascinating, and I kind of like the balance between sort of storytelling but news, and, you know, it is definitely still a narrative that these people sort of work on. So once I started
between, like, you know, being ethical about things, and, you know, how much people actually need to know, or how much do we just sort of like look in a car crash kind of thing, you know, because
that's right.
Yeah,
it's a lot of like decision making that they've got to do quite quickly. But I find the journalists really inspiring, in the sense the ones that kind of end up, you know, cracking big cases and actually bringing down sort of, you know, government corruption or business corruption. I think it's a really interesting kind of vocation. So once I decided that I wanted Ollie to be a journalist, and I wanted her to be sort of working on a cold case that she had written about in the past, I guess immediately I knew that she was going to be an older journalist. And when I say older, like, she's obviously still just hitting sort of middle age, but I old enough to see all the change, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's when I think the idea of, because I'd had this idea of like a podcast potentially being much more of a vehicle in a story, but I haven't really ever figured out exactly how that was going to work. And then, once I sort of decided that she would have done these dual timelines, I kind of thought, well, what would really frustrate her, being quite a traditional sort of print journalist, and that would be some annoying new age, new media millennial coming in and not only being quite irritating from just a personality perspective, but I guess just having this naive enthusiasm about a platform that she just didn't necessarily buy into yet. She just doesn't like the idea of it because she doesn't think it's real journalism. And I kind of liked that tension. I thought that was kind of fun.
So did I. And I think it's interesting because she obviously is clearly annoyed by Cooper at first, yet from what I've heard you doing podcasts and I've listened to a few with you talking, I've seen people talk in book club obviously about this book, it seems people love Cooper. Don't they? So it's fascinating that you can create, like, I think that's really clever characterization, that you can create a character that is annoying your main character, who we're kind of hearing and letting the story through, yet everyone else is kind of endeared to him. Like, did you plan that to happen, or it just miraculously seemed to work like that?
I think I didn't. I don't know. Like, I don't think I ever planned anything, but
that was one of my questions too. You're like me. I like it.
Yeah. There's no real plan, but then I think there is sort of, I guess, an understanding of how everyone is going to relate to each other. And I knew that Ollie's the kind of main character that has got some really good qualities, but definitely as a reader, you're not going to like every decision that she's made or every reaction that she has, and that's fine. I kind of have decided that I just write main characters that can be mildly annoying and questionable judgment.
Right. Of course, it makes a character interesting, but there's enough things in because their motivation, and that they are struggling with everyday things. Like, I mean, we also found, this is why I talk about the characterization in the beginning, the way that Ollie is now, and great name, by the way. I love characters that have sort of, names that you don't kind of hear all the time. But, the whole situation with her and Dean, if I can remember correctly, and Tracy said, nobody likes a perfect character. So there you go. I think, like, we're all told to write likable characters, especially in the genres that I write in, romance and women's fiction. But at the same time, nobody wants a completely perfect character. Even you want to like them because they're flawed often, or you can relate to them. But Reed, Dean and her, like, that's a really, quite aside from the crime, and I think I was particularly fascinated with the relationship that she had with him, which obviously started as an affair when he was married, but then he's got 2 little kids, and that is a really hard situation kind of to go into. So I think you can, even as a mum, you can relate. You can relate to your own kids. Sometimes they annoy you, but then if you love other people's kids, not everyone. It's a hard thing to do, and I talked to Anthea about this, not on air, I think, but about the fact that I feel like in some ways, if you haven't had your own kids, that may be even harder, because you don't know, you don't know that kids are sometimes annoying, and that and you're having to get used to that. So that was really fascinating. How did you feel writing that? And
I mean, just firstly on your characterization point, like I often kind of think a story like Gone with the Wind, for example, no one's reading that for Melanie, right? So
I have to say, I've only seen the movie. I feel really terrible that I have not read Gone with the Wind. It's one of those.
It's very good. It's very good. But I mean, a character like Scarlett O'Hara is kind of so iconic, and she's a terrible person in a million different ways, but she's also a fantastic character and very memorable. And I kind of think that as long as your characters are prompting some kind of reaction, good, bad, or otherwise, that's, I think, important. So I definitely like creating characters that sort of prompt a little bit of a feeling of some kind. But I think with Ollie in particular, yes, I wanted to kind of put her in a difficult circumstance from the start, but also a little bit of a circumstance that she had wanted. She'd really wanted that life for a long time, and I think it was almost a little bit like careful what you wish for, because she got what she kind of wished for.
Another title for the book.
It kind of just didn't really end up being what she thought it would be, which
Mm.
I think does happen quite a bit. No,
Yeah.
maybe in that exact kind of circumstance, but you know, that was interesting for me to play around with. And then I think she actually felt a lot of guilt around that. You know, she really sort of felt like almost a societal pressure to sort of be happy, because she's like, I know that this is what a lot of people want. I wanted it myself. I finally got it. I have to surely be excited and happy about it. And then she feels really tormented when she knows deep down, she's like, not sure if I'm actually that happy.
And I think we've also got the societal pressure, as you said, no matter how far we come, it's like, you know, in your head, well, she's a woman, so she should accept these children. She should be motherly, because that's, you know, and even though, as I say that, I think that's, you know, ridiculous, it's just what we've been kind of, so, you know, she's probably feeling that sort of pressure. And even Dean, he kind of expects her to step into that role, even though his wife was obviously Isabel, his wife was very, obviously, you know, obviously she loved her kids, but she wanted to have a career and all that sort of stuff as well. So
I mean, Isabel is almost my favorite character in the book, I think, because I mean, I did love writing Cooper, but Isabel's so sort of mysterious, and you know, she is the sort of the housemate, right? She's the housemate that Ollie is still living.
I've got a question actually from Judith Ann Lip, and I had not thought of this. We did have a bit of discussion about the title, and you know, on the front it says 3 housemates, 1 dead, 1 missing, and 1 accused of murder. And someone mentioned when we're having our live chat last weekend or something, who's the housemate? You know, is it the dead person? Is it the one accused of murder? Is it the one missing? And then nobody actually came up with this. I feel very dumb that I did not. I mustn't have noticed this. I do remember the line now that Judith Ann said, but Judith Ann, part of our group, has said, I'm interested if the title relates to Isabel. In Kindle at 91%, Isabel is described as the silent housemate. This would explain the singular, not the plural, if the reference was to girl. So obviously that's what you intended. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it works all the ways, I think, really. But and you know, once you read the story, you sort of understand that yes, there's 3 housemates, but I guess there's sort of one that is particularly problematic of the 3. And it takes a while to kind of work out, I suppose, which one that is. And then I think from a Ollie perspective, she has this presence in the house that she has moved into, and she has this kind of ghost that she has to coexist with, which I really like.
Everything's all her things are still, that would be, and that's an impossible situation, I think, but the same and when there's around that
it's really impossible, but like, I think impossible, but also difficult, like a really difficult position for her to be in, because you can kind of imagine wanting to say something, but then also, again, I think the guilt gets to her, where she's sort of like, oh, I don't want to be that new girlfriend that's kind of demanding all of the dead woman's things are gone. And I mean, what kind of person am I, you know? And also she still feels guilty because they had the affair. And so I think she's really stuck in this strange place where she has kind of won, but she's got no power. And I quite liked that dynamic, and kind of felt like it was a little bit unusual. But I really liked exploring that kind of step parent, complicated relationship, all the guilt that she has. But then also, you know, she is someone who's like a modern person with a career and opinions and stuff. So it's not like she's someone who's not used to speaking up for herself. So it's all kind of, hopefully quite complicated, but in a good way.
It's definitely complex. I think the more we talk about, there's so many different issues and things to unpack. And that's even, you know, there's just not quite aside from the actual housemate crime. You know, you linked everything together. Someone said here, and I think you possibly answered it. It kind of ties into a question of mine, but with so many threads in this novel, I want to know if you're a writer who maps her path in advance, or are you a character lead as your thoughts unfold type of person? And when did you know the ending? So I'm always fascinated to hear other writers' processes, and I find that lots of readers are as well, and especially in crime, because you know, when I hear crime authors say that they, even though I myself do not do a lot of planning, and the more further the story goes, I think I more am organic and sort of just, you know, let it go and the notes come less and less. But when I hear a crime writer say that they didn't plan it and they didn't know who, I'm always in awe. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you draw everything together?
It's so messy. Like, honestly. I think the way it seems to work best, the way it's worked so far for me every time is that I do think about the story quite a bit. Or
Before you start writing.
instance, yeah, I might like write a chapter or write 2 chapters and then absolutely tools down and then kind of just keep thinking for a couple of weeks. And I don't write anything down. I think that's very much just in my head, and it's sort of almost like it's all getting done. Sometimes it's getting done, I think, in the background, like I'm not even actively thinking about it. And then I'll sort of write more, and then I actually start almost getting bored with my own story, and I jump around and like write chapters at the end and write chapters at the start. And so it ends up being like a really weird patchwork kind of job where I do kind of stitch everything together. And a lot of, I think, the process of my working is kind of knowing that there's a good scene that I've got to kind of get to, and then I kind of have to work out how to join those 2 like disparate chapters.
Totally,
yeah. But I mean, I work in Word, so it's really manual, and like sounds similar, but it's not. I don't think it's a process that I'd ever kind of recommend. But I've also got to a point where I'm like, oh, well, like who cares how I do it? It doesn't really matter to anybody except for me. There's probably much more efficient ways of doing it, but maybe not.
I completely agree. I really think like it's taken me a long time to get to that point. So you've got there a little bit, it's 4 books. I think it's taken me probably a few more, but like, I've tried to plan more, and I've thought, this is taking me forever because I'm going, I'm a huge overwriter. But then I realized that everyone does write differently. Like even the way you said at the beginning that you'd write a couple of chapters, and then maybe leave it for a few weeks. That's why I hate writing rules, and I hate people saying this is how it must be done, because it's always the people saying you should write every day. You must always, and the thing is, you don't have to. You've written 4 great books without doing that. So, there's no rules.
It's very sort of like, I am quite an organized person generally speaking, but also, I mean, I do work as well. So I can't even commit to writing every day anyway. And I also think that if you're not into the idea of writing on that particular day, you're better off spending just time kind of percolating thoughts in your mind anyway. I think that's probably more effective.
I feel like sometimes for me, you have to really analyze your mood and know sort of why you're not feeling like writing. Is it just because if you sit down, you'll actually get there and you'll do a bit and it'll come, or do you really need just time a way to process it? And sometimes you do. So it's working out that. There's a few questions coming, which I'll get to Kel's in a minute because I have got it here. But I just wanted to say one thing, because you mentioned your day job as well.
Yes.
And that is in advertising. Is that right?
So it's in advertising, but so I don't work in the creative part of advertising though. So I mean, I do obviously do some writing in my job because I emails and presentations and things like that. But I'm not part of the department that comes up with creative concepts, which I think is probably good from a separation perspective. So my job is, like, I'm the managing director. So I manage the 120 people across the 2 offices in Melbourne and Sydney. And client management, client relationships, financials, strategy. And then, I do sort of through my job have to provide quite a lot of feedback to creative people, which is really interesting. And I think that's been really helpful because it's made me, I think, be a better receiver of feedback.
Editors or readers.
I mean, it's still difficult, as you would know, having to navigate and work through how you're going to address the feedback. But I've always been pretty, I think right from the start, my editor was like, oh, you're very kind of pragmatic with feedback. And I'm like, well, I guess I've done this a lot the other way around. And so I know that, people are just trying to make your ideas better. It's not personal. It's always
on the
about
same page. And you'd be the same with your the people in your advertising. You want them to obviously create the best product for everyone. So it's not you're being mean or
but also like feedback is subjective, and I don't argue much with feedback that I get because I can normally see that it's probably going to make the book better. But there has been a handful of times where I've gone, actually, no, I don't agree with that. And I'm really clear why.
Same.
But it's still nice to be able to take that feedback and then go, nah, hang on a minute.
think
I know.
about it.
Yeah. And really have like a good argument to kind of come back and say, I've thought about your suggestion, but I think this is why it doesn't work. And there's
Same.
kind of a nice, I don't know, like that's a nice part of the process too, I think.
Yeah. It's so funny because I did an event last night and I had a guy come up to me and he said, I really liked your latest book, but I think it's a fake relationship trope. And he said, I think, she should have argued. He gave in too quick to this, fake relationship. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right for a second. But then, and it's reminded me a bit of editing, because then I thought, I've signed another book and I thought, actually, no, I don't think you are right, because that character was a very spur of the moment decision to go on the request a fake relationship. If he'd said no and she'd had time to think, she would have backed out, and then you got no book. So it's similar. Like, sometimes the initial feedback, you're like, you need time to think about, and if you do believe it for your book, I'm the same as you. I'll stick, definitely stick to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
One other question just relating to, so obviously, the advertising helps in that way and your day job, but I'm fascinated. Do you think, if you, your books are doing pretty well, it seems, but if you suddenly became, Leanne Moriarty or Jane Harper, do you reckon you'd keep your day job?
Well, I think the idea of that suddenly happening is slim, but
Never know.
I don't know. I mean, I sort of I've always worked in advertising, and I did sort of do a little bit of an experiment a few years ago where I only really worked sort of 1 or 2 days a week, and that was probably the worst writing experience of my life so far, in that that was the draft that had the worst feedback, and I think I ended up over engineering it and rewriting pretty much the whole book, and I procrastinated more than I've ever procrastinated in my life. So I don't know how pure that experiment was. Maybe that story was just difficult to pull together. Maybe there was other reasons why it didn't work. But I guess in my mind, I'm like, I tried to not work and write and it didn't work. So I guess.
Well, I actually think I can relate to that. Like, we used to own a supermarket and in the country, and I was first writing published, and I had kids still at home, and I got so much more done than when we moved to the city. I didn't have that job, and my kids were all at school. So I actually went and worked in a bookshop a couple of years ago, one day, because I also think you're interacting with other people too. You're not alone, and there's just I think there's a lot of benefits of still having at least some job. I
think so too. Like, I think, there's definitely a balance though. Like right now and the last sort of 2 months, I've taken on sort of a little bit of a different role at work. It's much bigger. There's much more travel involved now that we're out of lockdown. And I haven't even bothered trying to think about writing for the last few months. So, I think there is a tipping point, but I don't know. I like both. Both are good in different ways. And I do love being around people, and I really love managing people. And I know writing would never give me that. So I don't know.
Your characters.
Yeah,
like Elizabeth Gilbert says, you should never make your passion or your hobby pay for your, be the one that's paying for your bills. And I relate to that, sometimes, because it puts a pressure on your writing. If that, obviously you've got your different pressures, you probably have got your own expectations, and you've got readers' expectations and things you want to achieve. But if you then have to pay your bills, it suddenly becomes, it's a different kind of pressure, and I don't think that's necessarily good for creativity. But, but yeah, as you said, alternative, it's finding the time.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I think, I guess with writing, I kind of look at it and think, well, hopefully I'll be able to do it forever in some way or another, whether or not it's a book regularly or just every, couple of years. Like, it's something that I feel like hopefully I'll still be able to do. So I think for now it kind of is, the advertising piece is taking the priority, but maybe that will flip around at some point.
Yeah.
We'll see.
There's so many people that manage, a job and writing, and everyone does it in their own different ways. I've heard people have, 4 days a week and 1 day writing. I know Caroline Overington said she did that. Yeah. Holly Wainwright, that she took a chunk of 6 weeks off, and so I guess you do.
Yeah.
Just a few questions coming through, and I'll wear that. I don't want to hold you up too much longer. So I'll just ask the ones on here and then check the ones from my group. Now, if anyone is watching, there may be spoilers. So with this question. So Kel said, I would like to know what the relevance of the O'Brien storyline was. Was it just a red herring?
So the answer is sort of both. Like for me, it was really important to have people in positions of power all across the book behaving in questionable ways. So I guess there's the police force, there's politics, and then there's also the education industry. And all three of those institutions they all have power, obviously. Yeah, and they all have a sinister element to them in this book. At the end, this particular storyline is left quite ambiguous, but there is the implication that it's just a matter of time where they sort of find out that he's actually been involved, because there's so many connections. And I think, his wife's guilt in relation to what he's potentially done, I think, is a strong implication that there's definitely some bad behaviour going on there.
Good. Somebody else said in the group, Renee, who killed Cooper? And I was trying to remember. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, so that definitely is resolved in the story in my mind, where at the end of the story, there's an exchange between Ollie and the chief inspector, and it's pretty clear that he is sort of ambiguously taking the blame for that.
That's what I thought. As I said, we'll make sure if we share this, we'll make sure it's spoiler free. Tell everyone. Kel also said, speaking of feedback, do you read reviews of your books? Love this question. Yeah.
So I do. I mean, I read sort of formal published reviews, I suppose. And I kind of go, oh, well, like at least people are talking about the book. So I'm not too bothered if they're good or bad. But in terms of things like Goodreads or Amazon, I think maybe I used to read them all, but now I probably read them when the book first comes out, and then I completely lose track and I don't read them. So, I mean, I have no idea how many Goodreads reviews are for The Housemate now. I just sort of stopped checking, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I actually really like feedback, and I find sometimes, as you said before, I'll be like, oh, actually, that's a really good point. Like, that's fair. Or I'm kind of like quite, accepting of most criticism. I'm sort of like, I can see why you would say that.
Yeah.
But
I guess how it's framed as well, in the tone of it.
Yeah, that's right. And also, like, I read a lot of books and I mainly like them, but every now and again I'm like, oh, that one didn't grab me, and that's fine. I totally accept that.
Yeah,
exactly. So I read them, but I don't kind of I don't sort of slavishly read them and study them and get angry about them.
One more question from here. Do you have much input into the covers? Everyone always wants to know this.
Oh, look, not really. I mean, my publishers, and look, this is probably another thing from my advertising career where I'm like, they're publishers, I am not. I think they know what they're doing. They want the absolute best for my book. So if they've kind of concocted a design and a title and a blurb that they think works, I'll definitely have an opinion on it if I feel like gut feeling that I'm worried. But I really have basically not had any feedback on any of my Australian covers at all. The only time I've been like difficult author is when The Dark Lake came out in the States, and they sent through a cover, and I, opened the PDF and genuinely had like an allergic reaction. I was just like, ugh, so ugly. Yeah, and so I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh, I hate it. Like, I just actually hate it, and I've loved all the other, designs anyone's ever shown me. So I called my agent and I said, I don't want to be difficult, but like, I really just dislike it.
And covers are very important.
Yeah, she was really good. She was really good. She was like, oh no, it's disgusting. It's very ugly. I'm going to tell them it's very ugly. You don't have to worry about that. And I was like,
that's the good thing about agents. They can deal with that.
But honestly, apart from that, I have thought that they're all good in different ways, and I have always been sort of surprised by them, but in a positive sense. So it's so exciting when you see the cover. Like I've always found it to be a fun
Best day.
part. Yeah.
Here you go. Kel's looked for you. 744 ratings, 103 reviews.
Oh, there you go. I have to go and have a look.
As I said, I'll wrap up in a moment because we've talked for over half an hour. But I'm so fascinated by everything you're saying. But I just wanted to. There's one more question we had in the group. Actually, two more. And feel free to just give quick answers.
Sure.
Jessie and Nicole both want to know: are you planning to write another book with the character Ollie in it? And Nicole said yes. Good question. There's enough background to Ollie's story to write more with her as the main character.
So the short answer is no. I haven't got any plan, and I absolutely didn't have a plan to do that when I was writing the story either. But you never know, I suppose, is probably my answer.
I would say never. It depends if something comes up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I didn't really think that The Dark Lake was going to turn into a sequel and then a trilogy. So it's possible. I think she's a great character. I liked writing her. So yeah, maybe.
Too. It'll be interesting to see it. I'd like to see more of Rusty.
Yeah. I have had a bit of that. Yeah, so maybe, but no kind of current plans.
No worries. And the final question from the group is there anything you're working on now? But I think you've kind of sort of answered that already.
Yeah, so no novels, but I am involved in the treatment stage of The Dark Lake. It's been optioned for film, or well, actually for TV.
Okay,
and I am involved in writing the treatment structure of that. So that's the only kind of writing thing that I'm doing at the moment.
Wow, that's quite a different process, I know, because a friend's also just, and yeah, it's very different. I don't know if I could do it, but I guess
I have no idea if I can do it either.
But anyway, thank you so much. I have one final question from me. Have you ever considered writing in another genre, or was crime always it for you?
Oh no, I sort of probably started in other genres in that I wrote sort of some short stories and things like that, and they were not crime particularly. I mean, some kind of were, but most weren't. And then I think really all that happened was that The Dark Lake just happened to be a murder mystery story, and then once I wrote that, that was it really. But it wasn't really
picked up. You're expected to do more.
It wasn't intentional at all. It just happened to be that story, and so that's kind of where I've landed, and I like it. And I think it maybe suits most of my ideas. Tend to be centered around something like that, but I'm not sort of opposed to the idea of trying something else at some stage. But it just hasn't happened so far.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've got a quick saying. This is from Tracy saying exciting. I think that's about the TV series. Me too. I hope that comes about because I really would love to watch that. And Kel has said you could do both. You could both do it. Oh, thank you, Kel. And thanks for a great chat. And please keep writing. And you too, Rachel. Well, I have to because it pays my bills at the moment. I don't have another job, unfortunately. So I'll keep trying. So I'm happy to keep doing it. And Tracy's saying thank you. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. I know you've had a long day and already been flying across the country. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me and for everybody's nice comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. We will see you next weekend, I think it is, for Joanna and Nels, the Tea Ladies of St Jude's Hospital. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.